After a lot of testing, I have created a build that feels like you just got a promotion at work. There's a solipsism roll on Prismatic Warlock that performed much better than I had anticipated. It involves Spirit of the Necrotic combined with Spirit of the Claw. This combo allows you to spam melees constantly and synergize with Transcendence to turn yourself into a teleporting electric entity of destruction. What's up, Guardians? My name's Novers, and welcome back. Or welcome in if you're new. Let's jump straight into the spicy details of the build. Also, a really cool fun fact here, you'll be able to stun Overload, Unstop, and Barrier champions with this build. Starting off, there are multiple weapons this build uses to reach its full potential. The first of which is actually a group of weapons known as the Weapons of Sorrow: Thorn, Osteostriga, Touch of Malice, and Necrochasm. But in the gameplay, I decided to use Thorn. Any of the weapons work, so I would recommend using the one that best fits your playstyle, as Spirit of the Necrotic allows you to spread poison using each of these weapons. Upon application, the poison damage spreads up to 5 meters in radius and ticks up to 20 times over a 10-second period. For your energy slot, I'm using the 2-burst Festival of the Lost Shotgun Arcane Embrace, with 4 times the charm plus Precision Instrument. There are a few interactions with the artifact that justify using this weapon that I will discuss later on. For your heavy slot, you need to use a weapon depending on the activity or encounter. For damage, I recommend using a grenade launcher, rocket, or vortex frame sword. For general ad clears such as first encounter of Vesper's Host or a Grandmaster Nightfall, Commemoration is a solid option, as its origin trait, Bray Inheritance, helps you generate ability energy when dealing damage. Now that we've covered the weapons and the basic rundown, let's move on to the subclass. Firstly, for the super, I recommend Song of Flame with this build, which I'm about to explain. You're welcome to use a different super if you'd like, but Song of Flame works best with this setup. For your class ability, I like using Phoenix Dive for the instant healing plus shorter cooldown. It honestly doesn't matter, you can use Rift if you'd like, but Phoenix Dive for me is my personal preference. For your melee, run Arcane Needle. Spirit of the Claw, the second exotic perk, allows you to get an extra melee charge. This gives you up to 4 total with your Arcane Needle and 2 Incinerator Snap melees during your Song of Flame, which is one reason why I love using that super in this build. For your grenade, I recommend running Cold Snap grenades for freezing targets and giving you another method of stunning unstoppable champions. Now, our first aspect is our survivability tool, Feed the Void. Defeat a target with any ability to activate Devour. Your Devour effects are improved, restoring additional health and grenade energy. Now, specifically with Devour, after proccing it, each kill grants you full health as well as between 15 and 40% grenade ability energy on each kill depending on the level of combatant. Our next aspect is the bread and butter of this build, Lightning Surge. While sliding, activate your charged melee ability to blink forward, calling down lightning strikes that jolt targets as you rematerialize. Now, since we are using Spirit of the Claw as well as Arcane Needle combined, we will be able to hold up to 4 Lightning Surge charges at all times, which is insane. It also grants you damage resistance and amplified. Next, let's discuss the fragments. Our first fragment is Facet of Protection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While transcendent, the effect is increased. Now, you'll be utilizing this fragment very frequently with this build, as with Lightning Surge, you'll be all up in the enemy's faces with the melees, meaning you're going to want to have Facet of Protection up at all times, which also stacks with the Lightning Surge damage resistance. Our next fragment is Facet of Grace. Defeating targets with kinetic weapons grants you bonus Transcendence energy. Defeating targets with your super grants you and nearby allies bonus Transcendence energy. Now, since we do have Spirit of the Necrotic combined with Thorn or whatever other weapon of sorrow you choose to use, we'll be doing passive damage over time, meaning we're going to be getting Transcendence energy for both light and dark passively, which is huge for getting your Transcendence fully charged quickly. Also, while using your Song of Flame, you're going to defeat a ton of targets, meaning you'll be able to get tons of Transcendence energy that way as well. Next is Facet of Dawn. Powered melee hits against targets make you radiant. Powered melee final blows make you and nearby allies radiant. Now, of course, since we're using the Lightning Surge melee, we're going to be getting a lot of kills and hits to proc this fragment, meaning we'll have Radiant pretty much all the time. Now, if you were curious, Radiant is a 25% damage buff. It also grants you the ability to pierce barrier champion shields. Our next fragment is Facet of Sacrifice. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability final blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendence energy. Now, we'll have Devour up almost 100% of the time, as well as Radiant, so you'll be able to utilize this quite frequently. So your Thorn, your super, and all of your other abilities will all be able to grant you Transcendence energy. We play into Transcendence here because this allows you to get even more charges for your melee, which is the primary use of this build. The final fragment we're using is Facet of Awakening. Rapidly defeating targets with light or darkness damage or super final blows generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. Now, since Lightning Surge is an arc melee ability, we will be generating a lot of ionic traces due to this fragment, which works very well with the artifact, which we will discuss shortly. Now, we're going to talk about the artifact perks. The first one is Authorize Mods Melee, which will reduce the cost of all of the melee-related armor mods. This will open up room for different stat mods such as resilience or recovery. Next is Trace Evidence. Rapid precision hits or rapid final blows on targets affected by Jolt or Blind will generate ionic traces. Now, as we discussed, Lightning Surge will jolt targets, so this is a great way to generate ionic traces, giving you more ability energy. Next is the thick of it. Rapid final blows while surrounded grant you armor charge. So on top of everything else that Lightning Surge is going to give you, it's also going to give you armor charge when killing multiple enemies with your melee. Next is Retinal Burn. Rapid arc weapon precision hits consume an armor charge to blind the target. Now this is the artifact perk that allows your Arcane Embrace shotgun to stun unstoppable champions. As long as you have an armor charge up, which with the artifact and different pieces of this build you will have almost 100% uptime on, you'll be able to stun the unstoppable champion by just hitting a few precision hits on it. Next is Curative Orbs. The first time you break a target's shield or break the shield of a guardian using their super, you create an orb of power. Now we have Served Cold, which you're not going to be utilizing too often, but it can come in clutch when you do use your Cold Snap grenades. Picking up a Stasis Shard grants you class ability energy, and picking up a Void Breach grants you melee energy. Now again, like I said, this isn't something you're going to be using too often, but it can definitely help with extra generation of your abilities. Now, Stasis Shards do give you melee energy, and with this perk, they'll also give you class ability energy, so I would throw this on just in case. The last artifact perk is Arc Compounding. Arc sources deal increased damage to blind targets. Now, this is very strong, as you compare this with Retinal Burn to do a ridiculous amount of damage with both your melee and your Arcane Embrace shotgun to melt very tanky enemies such as unstoppable champions. That just about does it for the artifact perks. Now let's talk about the tonic that I recommend using with this build. Now I recommend using the Refined Tonic of Amplified Arc. We do not use the first part of this as we aren't using an arc primary ammo weapon. However, we do use the artifact perk boosts. The first one is Trace Evidence. Picking up an ionic trace grants an armor charge. The second one is Retinal Burn. Blinding a target this way instead emits a blinding burst. That will allow you to blind groups of enemies rather than just one enemy with this artifact perk. Now let's move on to the armor mods. Firstly, on your helmet, run Heavy Ammo Finder, Heavy Ammo Scout, and a Kinetic Siphon. However, you can sub out the Heavy Finder for a Special Finder. Now, Kinetic Siphon allows Thorn to generate orbs of power. Next, on your gauntlets, run Heavy-Handed, Melee Kickstart, and Momentum Transfer. Now, firstly, with Heavy-Handed, you're going to be able to create orbs of power upon getting powered melee final blows, which is very easy to do with the Lightning Surge. Now, Melee Kickstart is really strong here for two reasons. Firstly, we have 4 melee charges, and secondly, getting armor charge is extremely easy with this build. So you'll be able to utilize this mod very frequently to reduce your overall cooldown of your melees. Now, as usual, on your chest piece, run 3 damage resistance mods that correlate to the threat of the activity. Now, on your legs, run Invigoration, Recuperation, and Elemental Charge. Invigoration is going to allow you to reduce your melee cooldown whenever you pick up an orb of power. Recuperation will be another method of regenerating your health. However, this isn't necessarily needed with Devour and other healing sources, but I just like using it as a failsafe. Lastly, I use Elemental Charge as we're going to be generating ionic traces as well as other pickups occasionally, so this gives you another method of generating armor charges. Lastly, on your class item, run Outreach, Powerful Attraction, and Reaper. Now these are going to give you a very good use case for your Rift or Phoenix Dive, whatever you decide to use. Alrighty, now that we've covered the armor mods, we're going to talk about a few stats that I recommend prioritizing with this build. Firstly, as usual, tier 10 resilience. You should always have tier 10 resilience no matter what in PvE activities, as it gives you the highest percentage of damage resistance in the game. Next, I recommend trying to get up to tier 10 strength, as your melees are your #1 ability with this build you'll be utilizing. Now the next stat is recovery, which I recommend trying to get to tier 7 or tier 8. Lastly, this is not required, but a 4th stat you could go after is discipline, tier 6 or higher, just to get extra grenade energy. Alrighty, that should be the spicy, juicy details of the build. Now we're going to talk about a short explanation of the gameplay. gameplay loop. Now, I'll start off with using your super. Now, since you do have 2 melee charges, I find it really effective to use 2 melees and then throw your grenade, and then 2 melees and then throw your grenade, repeated over and over again while using Song of Flame. Now, in terms of the normal build, you want to be farming Transcendence as fast as possible and proccing it as frequently as possible, and spamming grenades, spamming melees, and spamming all of your abilities. Now, Thorn is also a great way, as I mentioned earlier, to get passive Transcendence energy along with your other methods. Also, your Arcane Embrace is a great way to stun barriers and unstoppable champions. Now, in terms of stunning Overload champions, your Lightning Surge melee does jolt targets around it, so that'll be a great way of stunning those. Well, Guardians, that just about wraps up the build today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and before you go, I just wanted to say we are rapidly approaching 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, so if you do enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the post notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. Also, hit the like button, as it just takes a second. Even hit the dislike button if you don't like the video, you know? Either way, it works. Also, comment any video ideas you'd like to see or anything else, feedback, changes to the build, anything of the sort. Hope you have a great rest of your day, Guardians, and peace.